Chapter 1 in Reading Horizons covers letter sound knowledge, which evidence has shown is an essential element for skilled word-level reading. This knowledge is the foundation for both phonic decoding and for storing words in one's sight vocabulary. Thus, it is critical to know through some form of assessment that students have mastered their letter sound knowledge. Instructors can assign students the Chapter 1 assessment on the software to gather this data. If students' letter sound knowledge is already known from previous assessments, it is not necessary to give students the Chapter 1 assessment on Reading Horizons. If it is identified through assessment that a student needs additional instruction on particular letters and sounds, those specific lessons can be assigned in the software through the administrative portal. You can reach out to your Customer Success Manager if you need help with this. If students are found to be proficient in Chapter 1 concepts, either in Reading Horizons Discovery or Reading Horizons Elevate, then you, the instructor, can provide a lesson on the 4 key concepts from Chapter 1 and move students to Chapter 2. A structured literacy approach like Reading Horizons is systematic and cumulative, so it is important that students go through the program sequentially, since each new concept builds upon the previous concepts. The depth and breadth of the instruction and practice will depend upon the initial assessments and a student's mastery of the skill. Every student must know these 4 key concepts from Chapter 1. 1. The concept of a slide with the accompanying marking. 2. The concept of marking the vowels in words with an X underneath. 3. The concept of marking nonsense words with an asterisk in the front of the word. And 4. The CK spelling rule. The first key concept to teach from Chapter 1 is the slide. The slide is a research-based approach that is used early on in the program to aid in phonological blending and fluency. The slide is a consonant or consonants at the beginning of a word combined with a vowel. This intentionally helps students' oral development since the slide provides the same manner and placement of articulation of a spoken word, since we never pronounce a word or syllable without a vowel sound. The slide also provides a more accurate pronunciation of some consonants such as R and L. The slide is marked by placing an arrow underneath the letters. The slide arrow indicates 2 things. First, that this letter combination is not a word, and second, that students are to blend the sounds left to right in the direction that we read. There are a few options for practicing slides with students online. First, you can use the Preview Content tool on the software and display the lesson where the slide is introduced. For students in kindergarten, the slide is introduced in Lesson 4. For students in grades 1 through 3, the slide is introduced in Lesson 1. And for grades 4 through 12, the slide is introduced in Lesson 2. You can use the instruction in the software to support your instruction and then go through the activities. Or you can simply introduce the concept directly and then go straight to the activities on the software for practice and application. A second option is that you can practice slides with students by accessing the transfer cards from the letter group lessons on Reading Horizons Accelerate. You can put them up online and have students read the slides on the cards for practice and informal assessment. Another great option for Reading Horizons Discovery teachers is to use the PowerPoint slides for Chapter 1 found on Reading Horizons Accelerate to teach and practice the concept directly. Make sure students are able to pronounce the slides correctly and understand the purpose for marking the slide with an arrow underneath the letters. Once you are confident students are proficient in the slide, you can move to instructing the second key concept. The second key concept to teach from Chapter 1 is identifying and marking vowels in a word. Once a final consonant has been added, the slide arrow will be dropped and an X will be placed beneath the vowel. This is important for a few reasons. First, this helps students discern the difference between consonants and vowels. Second, this draws students' attention to the critical concept in orthographic knowledge that every word or syllable must contain a vowel. And third, later, when students encounter multisyllabic words, this will provide a visual cue to let students know how many syllables a word contains. The number of X's is the number of syllables. The main option to practice this concept is to use the Preview Content tool on the software and display the Building Words lesson where marking the vowel within words is introduced. For students in kindergarten, this is introduced in Lesson 8. For students in grades 1 through 3, this is introduced in Lesson 3. And for grades 4 through 12, this is introduced in Lesson 3. Again, you can use the instruction on the software to support your instruction and then go through the activities, or you can introduce the concept directly and then go straight to the activities for practice and application. Reading Horizons Discovery teachers can also use the Chapter 1 PowerPoint slides from Reading Horizons Accelerate to directly teach and practice this concept. The third key concept to teach from Chapter 1 is what a nonsense word is and how to mark it. A nonsense word is not a real word. It holds no meaning, but it will still follow the permissible patterns in English words. Teaching nonsense words artificially creates the situation of encountering a completely unfamiliar word. Using nonsense words provides a quick way to assess whether or not students are transferring their knowledge of phonics to reading and spelling without relying on context or memorization. A nonsense word is marked with an asterisk to the left of the word. This marking acts as a visual cue to help students remember that it is not a real word and that they do not need to attach meaning to that word. The vowel will be marked in a nonsense word because it is still adhering to the permissible pattern in English that every word, real or nonsense, must contain a vowel. The main option to practice this concept is to use the preview content tool on the software and display the nonsense words lesson where nonsense words are introduced. For students in kindergarten, this is introduced in Lesson 9. For students in grades 1 through 3, this is introduced in Lesson 4. And for grades 4 through 12, this is introduced in Lesson 4. Remember, you can use the instruction in the software to support your instruction and then go through the activities, or you can teach that concept directly and then go straight to the activities for practice and application. Reading Horizons Discovery teachers can also use the Chapter 1 PowerPoint slides from Reading Horizons Accelerate to directly teach and practice this concept. The fourth and final key concept to teach from Chapter 1 is the CK spelling rule. The letters C and K are the last two letters taught in Chapter 1. These letters are intentionally saved for last because they both make the same sound, and in order to know which one to use in words for the spelling of the K sound, a specific orthographic rule must be taught. The consonant phoneme K has more than one spelling, depending on the position of the phoneme in a word and because of the sounds that come before or after it. This rule is fairly predictable in the English language. If you hear K at the beginning of a word, listen for the vowel sound that follows to determine whether to use C or K. If you hear the vowel sounds for A, O, or U following the K sound, you will use the letter C. If you hear the vowel sounds for E or I, you will use the letter K. There is a rhyme that can be used as a mnemonic device to help students remember this rule. K takes the vowels I and E, and C takes the other three, A, O, and U. Once this spelling rule has been explicitly taught, provide students with sufficient examples and practice opportunities to ensure understanding and mastery of this concept. The main option to practice this concept is to use the preview content tool on the software and display the Spelling with C and K lesson, where this is taught. For students in kindergarten, this is taught in Lesson 39. For students in grades 1 through 3, this is taught in Lesson 14. And for grades 4 through 12, this is taught in Lesson 15. Remember, you can use the instruction on the software to support your instruction and then go through the activities, or you can teach that concept directly and then use those activities for practice and application on the software. Reading Horizons Discovery teachers can also use the Chapter 1 PowerPoint slides from Reading Horizons Accelerate to directly teach and practice this concept. Once students have been taught and shown proficiency in these 4 key concepts from Chapter 1, they can move on to Chapter 2. Remember, it is important that students move through the program sequentially to ensure all concepts are being linked together in a logical fashion. Following the instructional sequence as it is outlined will help ensure that students are connecting the new information and filling in gaps in the most effective way possible. It is important to be mindful of some principles of engagement with students to maintain their motivation. First, make sure students understand the purpose of explicit, systematic, and cumulative instruction to teach decoding and encoding skills. It is important they understand why it needs to start simple so that the skills can build upon each other. Second, set challenging but attainable goals with the students in their lessons, vocabulary, and library sections of the software. Encourage and support them in reaching their goals. Third, check in often and ask questions to assess if students are internalizing the information in a way that allows them to explain the skills and be metacognitive about the processes. And lastly, praise them often for their effort, not just their scores. Focus on modeling and fostering a growth mindset. Show them what they will be able to do upon completion of the program and help them keep their sights on the finish line. When motivation is addressed alongside providing students evidence-based reading strategies, students are set up for success. You can reach out to your customer success manager with any questions you have as you implement Reading Horizons with your students. We are here for you, so you can be there for your students.